I'm Dr. Mark, and you're watching Mototherapy 2025. I recently had surgery, and I was out of commission for over a month. I actually had a surgical injury, which isn't good, but I'm recovering, and I'm finally allowed to get back on my motorcycle. And during that time, I started reading a very interesting book called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by Robert Pirsig. Now, this is a book that's been around for a very long time. I remember seeing it on bookshelves and bookstores back when I was actually in high school. And I remember looking at it, thinking, well, I don't ride motorcycles, so there's not that much interest that I have in this book. But now that I'm a huge motorcycle enthusiast, I thought, well, why don't I pick this book up and see what it has to offer? And it's a surprising book. It's really nothing like anything I've ever read before, and it's changed my views on a lot of things. But it's also given me a number of insights into modern European philosophy, ancient European philosophy, and how it might be merged with Western spiritual philosophies like Zen Buddhism, Hinduism, and Taoism. So it's an incredible book for the right person to read. It's not really about motorcycles. It's not really about motorcycle maintenance, and it's not that much about Zen. But it's his attempt to try to merge the philosophies of Western and Eastern philosophies. And it is set in a motorcycle trip, an incredible, epic motorcycle trip. And he clearly does have some command of Zen Buddhism, but it's really his struggle to try to rectify the different approaches between Zen Buddhism and Western scientific philosophies and Western philosophical philosophies like Aristotle, Plato, Immanuel Kant, etc. So I think I'll get on the bike and I'll discuss this book, and it's a surprisingly insightful book, and it's really changed my thinking on a lot of things.
Okay, so this is the book that I'm going to review, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by Robert Pirsig. And I think a little background is helpful in understanding who Robert Pirsig is. So he was born in Minneapolis, Minnesota in 1828, and he is a Wunderkinder, as they would say in German. He's a wonder kid. He skipped several grades in high school. He graduates high school at the age of 14, and then is enrolled in University of Minnesota's biochemistry program. And initially, he is doing fantastic. He's like one of the smartest students in the entire college. At this point, he's 15 years old, and he's killing it. And he thrives on experimentation and hypothesis testing. And so he loves being in the lab and running experiments until one point he stumbles on a problem, which is he believes science to be almost like a religion for him, that science is the ultimate truth and science will eventually answer all questions. And if he just does enough research and there's enough publications, enough studies, all questions will be answered. Yet he notices for every experiment he does, more hypotheses are generated than questions are answered. And he realizes that the scientific method is going in the opposite direction that he was expecting. And he becomes very disillusioned with this because his idea is science is supposed to solve everything. And he admits that he's following science like a monk would follow their religion, like a Buddhist monk would adhere to Buddhism, or maybe a Catholic monk in a monastery would adhere to Catholicism. He had this idea sort of that science would set you free, and he admits that he is an atypical student. He's not focused on science as a career path. He's focused on science as a method of truth, of finding truth, that science itself is a fundamental path. And once he realizes that what is happening is actually fragmentation, and rather than all of the knowledge that's being gained from these experiments working towards a cohesive whole, towards a coherent system, it's fragmenting into more and more questions. And this completely changes his view of science. He becomes disillusioned and his grades start suffering. He actually gets kicked out of school and then ends up enlisting in the Army. Interestingly, he does eventually come back to college and decides to study philosophy. And he later goes on to say, science couldn't answer my questions, because he started asking his professors, like, why aren't we getting closer and closer towards a comprehensive answer to our questions? Why are we going in the wrong direction? Why are we getting more and more fragmented? And he said, well, science couldn't answer my questions because it's a sub-discipline of philosophy. It's a sub-discipline of a larger philosophical system, and that's why he ended up studying philosophy. He also ended up going to India and studying at this Hindu university in India called Bandras Hindu University. And so he's essentially a seeker trying to answer the big questions of the universe, and realizing that science isn't going to get him there, that science isn't going to answer his questions. It's not going to see the comprehensive whole of what he wants to achieve. And he is able to see that the masters, the sort of Greek masters in philosophy and the European masters, were concerned with these bigger questions, and that he was studying at a level below them. And I'm putting this all in my own words, but I have noticed a pattern that he doesn't quite elucidate, which is experimentation is conducted through a process of reductionism, in which we reduce everything to its component parts. And in that way, you're going to get some level of fragmentation, because if you keep reducing things, say from a molecular to a submolecular level or subatomic level, as you go further and further down, there's infinite levels. If there's infinite levels of complexity, there's no real end to it. Every experiment will yield more questions than answers. And Robert Pirsig is really troubled by this, but ultimately realizes that he has to go in a different direction to try to see the cohesive whole. And when he says this, which is pages 14 through 16 of this book, it stopped me like I hit a wall, because I realized he was struggling with a problem that is really part of Western civilization, which is, how do we bring back this reductionist system where we try to reduce everything into these components? How do we bring it back into a collective whole? So he has a really interesting perspective on this, and his challenge is that he's probably smarter than his professors. When he was a kid, his parents had him tested by a psychologist, and he was told he had an IQ above 170. Now, being a psychologist, I can tell you that really anything over 145 is a projection to some degree. And it's harder and harder as people get smarter and smarter to be really precise where they are in the bell curve. 145 is 3 standard deviations above the mean for the population. So when you get out above that, it's a projection. But clearly this guy is brilliant at a genius plus level. And this challenge he had becomes kind of his life challenge that he struggles with. And he actually has a mental breakdown and has to be hospitalized, because this is such a quandary for him to try to make sense of where science is going and understanding Western civilization, and then trying to merge Eastern philosophy into that. But really, he's a truth seeker who just has come at what we would often think of as classic philosophy or classic religion, but he's come at it with a scientific bent, and then he starts looking for the collective whole. And a lot of this gets unfolded in this epic motorcycle ride that he's doing with his son, riding on the back, and his friends. But it's a fantastic book to help people think through these challenges, and I really recommend it from the sense that it's a way of trying to understand this problem that we have in Western culture, particularly with our scientific inquiry, in the sense that we often are so busy reducing things to their component parts and then studying each part, we forget to try to bring everything back to a collective whole and what the full meaning of it is. And it's interesting that he has a love for motorcycles, and with all this brain power, he likes to work on his own motorcycles. The book itself isn't a great book on actually motorcycle maintenance, because you would need to really get a shop manual for your specific motorcycle if you own one. But it is also a book on the philosophy of being able to work on your own machine and understand every component and how it works and how you can actually take care of it. And particularly when Robert Pirsig was writing this book, motorcycles were even simpler than they are now. And so the ability to fix a machine like a motorcycle with just a handful of tools was even more true then than it is today, but still pretty easy to work on a motorcycle versus a car. And his sort of need to understand every component of the motorcycle and how to fix it, but also the ability to bring it together to function is sort of a metaphor for how he views his emerging belief system to try to understand the universe and answer those big questions that everybody asks, like why are we here? What's the meaning of life? What's the purpose of all of this? But he's coming at it initially from a very, very scientific background. So I think it's an interesting book to read. I think a lot of people will get a lot out of it. I recommend it for someone who's had thoughts along these lines. I don't know that you actually have to be into motorcycles or even into Zen to enjoy the book. I think it's actually a book for people who have struggled with trying to merge Eastern philosophy, Eastern religions with Western philosophy. And a lot of us who have maybe studied Zen Buddhism or Hinduism and then have tried to make sense of Western religions and how those two might go together can really relate to this book and Robert Pirsig's struggles. So, by the way, this motorcycle ride that I'm showing in the background is a ride to Parker Canyon Lake in Arizona, and it's a beautiful lake. The lake is coming up soon in this video, but it's a nice destination to go to, and I thought it would be a good setting to watch to think about these issues. So for those of you who stayed to the end of the video, I give you Parker Canyon Lake and proof that Arizona does have lakes. It's not all desert and cactus, despite some of the naysayers. There are actually bodies of water here. So this was a beautiful destination at the end of this motorcycle ride, and I hope you enjoyed the book review.